It is 3 a.m. on June 22, 1941. At his dacha in Kuntsevo, 9 miles west of Moscow, surrounded by birch trees and summer firs, Joseph Stalin goes to bed. The house is still. The birch leaves do not move. 12 hours earlier, at 1 p.m. on June 21st, a code word passed down the command chain of Army Group North. Düsseldorf. It meant one thing. Operation Barbarossa begins at first light tomorrow. As Stalin sleeps, German sappers are already inside Soviet territory, cutting communications lines. The nerves of his army are being severed in the dark. The ending of this story is already known. What makes it worth telling is the distance between what was already true and what the most powerful man in the Soviet Union was willing to accept, and the words spoken in a Kremlin conference room when that distance finally ran out. Before the conference room, before the maps, before the 8 words, before the empty pipe, there is the system. The architecture of deliberate blindness that Joseph Stalin spent 15 years constructing and a single morning consuming. Between November 1940 and June 1941, Stalin receives 80 intelligence reports warning of a German invasion. 80, they are specific. A December 1940 GRU assessment predicts war by March. A March report says April or May. By June 17th, the assessment is unambiguous. The attack could begin at any moment. His generals, Marshal Semyon Timoshenko and General Georgy Zhukov, press him repeatedly as late as mid-June to take preparations seriously. Stalin's response is patient and certain. Germany has a treaty with us, he tells them. Germany is fighting Britain in the West. Hitler will not risk a second front. In late 1940, the director of Soviet military intelligence, Ivan Proskurov, is removed from his post. His crime, repeatedly telling Stalin that a German invasion is coming. He is eventually arrested. His replacement learns with some speed not to make the same mistake. The intelligence apparatus of the largest state on Earth is rewired to stop delivering accurate information to the one man who needs it most. This is not an accident. It is the system functioning as designed. The warnings keep coming from outside the apparatus anyway. Winston Churchill sends telegrams. The Chinese Communist Party alerts Moscow. A Soviet agent embedded in Tokyo, Richard Sorg, microfilms German troop numbers and the exact invasion date, June 22, 1941, and transmits it to Moscow. So the Kremlin's response arrives in 5 words. We doubt the veracity of your information. The agent who sent the right answer is dismissed. The apparatus that replaced Proskurov has learned its lesson well. In the weeks before the invasion, Luftwaffe reconnaissance aircraft spend their days flying over Soviet positions, photographing troop concentrations, supply dumps and airfields, mapping each one for the opening strike. Soviet artillery observers at the border watch them cross overhead, bank, and turn. They have their orders. Do not fire at German aircraft. To do so would be a provocation. So they watch. The Luftwaffe photographs them, notes their exact positions, and goes home to file its reports. On June 10th, 12 days before the invasion, Zhukov sends a message to the Kiev military district. Someone has ordered Soviet troops forward to occupy border positions. Zhukov demands the order be reversed immediately. Occupying those positions, he writes, could provoke the Germans into armed confrontation. He wants written confirmation by June 16th that the troops have pulled back. 12 days before the largest invasion in history, the Red Army is moving away from the border. On the evening of June 21st, a German soldier crosses the Soviet lines. His name is Alfred Liskow. He crosses at 9 in the evening and tells his interrogators everything. The attack comes at 4 in the morning. Timoshenko and Zhukov take this to Stalin. They go because there is no alternative. What Liskow is saying demands that someone stand in front of the leader and say the word aloud. Invasion. Stalin's response is immediate and absolute. The deserter is a provocation, a German trick. The man is either lying or has been fed disinformation by his own commanders. Stalin goes back to bed. In the early hours of June 22nd, the Soviet military districts receive NKO Directive No. 1. It instructs them to bring all forces to combat readiness. And then it adds a second clause. Avoid provocative actions of any kind. Go to war, but don't start a war. Most units receive this order too late to act on it. Those that receive it in time are left frozen. They may defend Soviet soil, but they may not counterattack. They may not escalate. They may not provoke. On the other side of the border, none of these conditions apply. Earlier that day, the code word for Army Group South passed through the chain: Dortmund. German commandos have already slipped into Soviet territory in the darkness. They're moving toward the communications lines that will be severed before dawn. And somewhere in the night, crossing from one country into another, rolls the last Soviet supply train. Grain and raw materials flowing west under the terms of the Economic Pact, its cargo moving toward Germany as German artillery crews finalize their targeting coordinates. The shells and the grain pass each other in the dark. Stalin sleeps. At 3:07 a.m., the first report reaches Moscow. It comes from Odessa. At 3:30, the district chief of staff in Belorussia reports massive air attacks. At 3:33, the same from Kiev. At 3:40, bombardments reported from Lithuania. In 33 minutes, the shape of the thing becomes visible. This is not a border incident. It is not a provocation. The front runs 1,800 miles, from the Baltic to the Black Sea, and it is simultaneously, entirely, on fire. Raids reach Kronstadt, near Leningrad, Sevastopol in the Crimea. Somewhere in the chaos, a frontline soldier reaches his headquarters by radio. He is being fired on, he says. What should he do? The response comes back across the line. You must be insane. Timoshenko orders Zhukov to wake Stalin. Zhukov picks up the telephone. He does not call Stalin. He calls Vlasic, the chief of Stalin's bodyguard, and asks him to rouse the leader. The culture of terror has reached all the way into the mechanics of crisis management. Even at this moment, on this morning, no one dares call Stalin directly. They go through his bodyguard. Stalin comes to the phone. Zhukov reports the scope of it. According to later accounts, Stalin says almost nothing. Breathing heavily, so he grunts that no countermeasures should be taken. His one concession: he will return to Moscow. His limousine moves through the pre-dawned dark. 9 miles of road. Moscow ahead, the Kremlin rising above the river. The phone is ringing. Reports are coming in. By the time Stalin enters the Kremlin, the war is already 2 hours old. Somewhere to the west, the last grain train is still moving. The men assembled in the Kremlin conference room know. They know before he speaks. They can see the scope of it in the numbers flooding in, and they stand around the long table and wait for the man at its head to tell them what to do. Stalin sits pale, an unlit pipe in his hand. Observers who were in the room later described it. The empty pipe, clutched as a man clutches something when he no longer knows what else to do with his hands. He speaks, and the first theory, stated aloud to the generals and the foreign minister. According to the accounts of those present, the outbreak must have come from within the Wehrmacht itself. A conspiracy. German generals acting without Hitler's orders. There is always a conspiracy. When Timoshenko demurs, Stalin turns the argument back on him. If someone wanted to organize a provocation, he says, German generals would bomb their own cities. Then comes the sentence. According to multiple witnesses who were in that room, writing years later from different positions and different circumstances, but with a consistency that historians have found credible. Joseph Stalin, hours into the largest invasion in history, with the Red Army being destroyed along 1,800 miles of front, says, Hitler surely doesn't know about it. No, he instructs Molotov to contact the German ambassador to clarify the situation. These accounts come from men who were present, writing afterward in changed circumstances, and the exact phrasing cannot be taken as transcript, but the substance of what they describe is consistent. A man so thoroughly committed to the reality he had constructed that even here, even now, he is looking for a version of events in which he was not wrong. Vyacheslav Molotov leaves the room. He is the man who signed the Non-Aggression Pact. His signature on that paper, alongside Ribbentrop's in August 1939, was meant to hold the line, to buy time, to make two great powers something other than enemies. Now he crosses the Kremlin to meet Ambassador Friedrich Werner von der Schulenburg, who had himself argued against this invasion, and who had told Hitler it was a catastrophic mistake, and who must now deliver the formal declaration of war to the man whose name is on the agreement that promised there would never be one. The room waits. Molotov returns. He crosses the floor to Stalin. According to those who were present, he says 8 words. The German government has declared war on us. Stalin slumps in his chair. The room is silent. Silence. Then Zhukov speaks. Measures to hold the enemy. Timoshenko corrects him immediately. Not to hold up, Timoshenko says. To annihilate. 2 professional soldiers, already in a different world from the man at the head of the table, are the only people in the room still doing their jobs. That morning, Molotov goes on the radio. Not Stalin, Molotov, the man who made the agreement that now lies in ruins, saint who walked across a room and came back with 8 words, addresses the Soviet people. He tells them what has happened. He ends with a phrase. He does not know yet that it will carry a country through 4 years of war. For now, it is just the end of a speech delivered by a man who has returned from hearing the worst sentence he will ever have to repeat. While the men in that conference room absorb what Molotov has brought back, the war is not waiting. General Ivan Boldin is the deputy commander on the Western Front. Early on June 22nd, with towns in Belarus being bombed, aircraft burning on the ground, and German paratroopers landing behind Soviet lines, Boldin receives a phone call from Timoshenko. He records the instruction in his memoirs. The words are these: "No action is to be taken against the Germans without our knowledge. Comrade Stalin has forbidden to open artillery fire against the Germans. Men are dying because they cannot get authorization to return fire. That is the system, rendered specific and human." At 7:15 a.m., NKO Directive No. 2 goes out. It orders Soviet air forces to strike Axis formations in German territory. At the moment it is written, the Luftwaffe has been operating for more than 4 hours. The planes that spent weeks photographing Soviet airfields have done their work. The airfields have been hit, the planes caught on the ground in the neat rows the reconnaissance flights so carefully mapped. By the end of the first day, roughly 1,800 Soviet aircraft will have been destroyed, most of them on the ground. The directive to conduct airstrikes commands an air force that no longer exists in any organized form. At 9:15 a.m., on Directive No. 3, signed by Timoshenko, it orders a general counter-offensive along the entire front. The Red Army is to encircle German formations near Suwałki. It is to seize the Lublin region in Poland by the evening of June 24th. The commanders in the field receive this and pass it along. They pass it along not because it is achievable, but because the alternative carries its own sentence. While these directives are being written, whole Soviet armies are being encircled. Communications are cut. Officers who have never been encouraged to exercise independent judgment are frozen, waiting for orders that arrive too late or not at all, or arrive as fantasies, demanding advances into territory that is already lost. The first momentum of the German assault has destroyed Soviet command and control at every level within hours, from the infantry platoon to the high command in Moscow. The orders go out into silence. For 8 days, Stalin holds himself together. The visitor's book at his Kremlin office records 177 people in and out between June 22nd and June 28th. Whatever is happening inside him, the disbelief, the fury, the vertigo of a man confronting what he has refused to see, he is still sitting at his desk, still receiving men, still producing the appearances of decisions. On June 27th, Zhukov and Timoshenko lay operational maps in front of him. The maps show the German advance. They show what is true. Witnesses describe Stalin's reaction as visibly shocked. The face of a man seeing something he could not, before this moment, make himself see. The following day, June 28th, Minsk falls. The German forces enter the city and on the way destroy 5 Soviet armies. 324,000 Soviet soldiers are captured, along with 3,300 tanks and 1,800 artillery pieces. In the first 7 days of the war, 600,000 Soviet soldiers are killed or captured. This is not a border battle. It is not a setback. It is the destruction of an organized force on a continental scale, and it is only the beginning. Stalin's fury falls on Zhukov. Georgy Zhukov is 44 years old. He commanded Soviet forces to a decisive victory against the Japanese at Khalkhin Gol in 1939. He argued with Stalin, directly at career-ending risk, about the defense of Kiev. He is known as bull-necked, plain-spoken, immovable under pressure, the kind of general who does not flinch. Stalin's rage reduces him to tears. Molotov offers him a handkerchief, and according to Molotov and others who were present, as Stalin leaves the room, he says, "To no one in particular, Lenin founded our state, and we've fucked it up." That evening, Stalin leaves the Kremlin and goes to his dacha. The Soviet state now has no functioning leader, not in any practical sense. Molotov will not sign orders, not because he lacks authority, but because he fears what Stalin might think when he returns. No one signs anything. The Germans are advancing on every front. The most powerful military apparatus in Europe is leaderless because no one dares to act in the absence of the one man whose absence has made action impossible. For 2 days, Stalin wanders his estate at Kuntsevo. The birch trees, the summer firs. No phone calls answered, no visitors. So the visitor's book tells the story precisely. Whatever the crisis was in the first hours of June 22nd, the breakdown came after Minsk, after the maps, after the numbers became undeniable. He held himself together for 8 days. Then he didn't. On June 30th, the Politburo members drive to Kuntsevo. They find, according to those who later described it, a gloomy old man sitting in a chair. When Stalin looks up and sees them, all of them, gathered, arriving unannounced, he is petrified. He has spent 20 years constructing a system in which group arrivals by powerful men meant one thing. He has ordered thousands arrested on lesser signals than this. He knows, in whatever place in a man's body that kind of knowledge lives, what a room full of powerful men arriving together usually means. He expects to be arrested. So they have not come to arrest him. They have come to beg him to return, to lead, to be again the thing they cannot function without. The center of a system so completely organized around one man that when that man disappears, the system stops. He built it that way. It cannot run without him, and so they beg. He agrees to return. The most feared man in the Soviet Union spent 3 days waiting to be shot by the men he had terrorized, and they came instead to plead. Stalin speaks to the Soviet people for the first time on July 3rd. 11 days after the invasion began, he addresses them as brothers and sisters, not comrades, not citizens. The language of the party is absent. Something simpler has replaced it, and the change is audible in every word. Semyon Timoshenko survives the war. In 1961, 20 years after that morning, he is indicted for the Red Army's unreadiness at the time of the German invasion. He is never sentenced. He dies in Moscow in 1970. Georgy Zhukov, the man who woke Stalin at 3:40 in the morning, who wept in a briefing room while Molotov offered him a handkerchief, who accepted whatever came next in a system that could destroy him on any given day, becomes the most decorated general officer in Soviet history. On May 8, 1945, in Berlin, he accepts Germany's unconditional surrender. He leads the victory parade through Red Square. 4 years from that conference room, from that empty pipe, from those 8 words delivered into silence, that is where he ends. By December 1941, the Red Army has suffered 4 million casualties. 3 million of them are starving in German prisoner-of-war camps. Before the war ends, it's the Soviet Union will lose 27 million people. That is the weight of 80 dismissed intelligence reports, of Ivan Proskurov in a prison cell, of Richard Sorge's microfilm with the exact date, of the artillery observers who watched the Luftwaffe photograph them, of the June 10th order that pulled troops back from the border, of the grain trains that ran until the shells passed overhead, of Directive No. 3 demanding the seizure of Lublin by June 24th, of a system built around one man's certainty, consuming everything it touched on June 22nd, 1941, while Stalin rode in a limousine on a road west of Moscow, while Zhukov and Timoshenko were already in a different world from the man they served, and while soldiers in Belarus were told they must be insane for reporting they were being shelled, Molotov stood at a radio microphone and spoke to the Soviet people. He ended with a phrase, "Our cause is just. The enemy will be crushed. Victory will be ours." He was right. It took 4 years and 27 million dead, but he was right. And the man who should have stood at that microphone, whose voice should have carried those words to his people on the worst morning of their lives, was 9 miles from the Kremlin in a car, receiving reports of a war he had spent years building the conditions not to believe.